I'm Leah Lane, an award-winning travel writer and author of Places I Remember, Tales, Truths, Delights from 100 Countries. On this podcast, we share conversations with travelers about fascinating destinations and memorable experiences around the world. I've spent several summers in a beautiful area of New York State that I especially wanted to share with you because even if you're a sophisticated traveler, you may not realize how special it is. So in this episode, we'll be focusing on water, specifically the quite amazing lakes, rivers, and canals, the waterways and waterfalls of upstate and western New York. We'll be talking mainly about the historic Erie Canal with its charming villages and quiet pleasures, and the Finger Lakes, 11 glacial lakes, most of them an hour or so south of Lake Ontario. The region is filled with rural towns, gorges, vineyards, hiking trails. It's a peaceful, unspoiled, laid-back part of the world. Our guest is Chris Jennings, General Manager of the Lake House on Canandaigua, voted by Travel and Leisure #1 resort hotel in New York State and #2 resort hotel in the continental U.S. Welcome, Chris, to Places I Remember.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, let's start by talking about upstate New York with a man-made waterway, the famous Erie Canal, which runs east-west between the Hudson River and Lake Erie. It's 339 miles long from Albany to Buffalo. Completed in 1825, the canal was the first navigable waterway connecting the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes, and it vastly reduced the costs of transporting people and goods across the Appalachians for about a century until the railroads and the highways took over. The Capital District, where the canal begins, is in and around Albany, New York. Besides the impressive government buildings, the area still has many architectural and historical reminders that it was first settled by the Dutch in the early 17th century and came under English control in 1664. Here's an interesting fact. Almost every major city in New York falls along the trade route established by the Hudson River and along the Erie Canal, from New York City to Albany, through Schenectady, Utica, and Syracuse, to Rochester and Buffalo, and nearly 80% of upstate New York's population lives within 25 miles of the Erie Canal. You can find out more about the canal in Syracuse. There's a building called the Waylock Building dating from 1850, and there's lots of information there to give you a real heads up on this wonderful American creation. Chris, let's talk about a few of the charming Erie Canal towns we both visited. They are no longer used for commercial transport. What's special about them now, would you say?
What I think special about is that the tours that they do on them now. You can get on a boat now at during the afternoon, evening, and they do dinners, and they'll have a band. Sometimes it's just for adults, sometimes it's for kids, so the parents can have fun sometimes. My kids have done it before, and they absolutely love it. Playing music, kids are just like, wow.
So how wide is the canal? How do you visualize it?
There's certain areas that are probably 20, 30 feet, but then I've seen it as wide as like 50, 60 feet sometimes. But most of the time it's skinnier.
Well, you can bike along it, you can walk and hike and stroll. There are areas of natural beauty on many of these canal paths.
But there's also a lot of restaurants along them too, which is super nice.
Yes, in Pittsford, there's a lovely area. Tell us about that. That's a suburb of Rochester.
Pittsford's our favorite place to go to. There's so many restaurants along the canal that we'll take our kids, and ducks there. They want to go fishing there. We've even sat at some of the restaurants, and they practice their rowing. They go past it and then they come back, and the kids are like, "What is this?" And like they're
a scene from the
practicing
18th or 19th century, very peaceful and pastoral.
Yes.
Ice cream at Pittsford Dairy. They've got terrific ice cream there. I've had that. I think
it's beautiful. These
villages retain their Erie Canal character, but many of them are still considered suburbs of bigger cities, such as Pittsford, which you mentioned, near Rochester, which is on Lake Ontario. Rochester itself has quite a history. It's become a boom town after the canal was built. It was home in the 1800s to Frederick Douglass, the African-American social reformer who escaped from slavery in Maryland and became a renowned abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman, and also Susan B. Anthony, who also lived in Rochester, an American social reformer and women's rights activist who played a pivotal role in the women's suffrage movement. Today, Rochester is a mid-sized city. It has lots to offer. Where would you bring visitors for a day in Rochester? What are a couple of the things you like in that city?
I would recommend coming to the festivals, like the Lilac Festival, or even the Greek Festival is probably my favorite. We also have this Rochester Museum down there, and they've had some dinosaurs, hockey. We have an amateur hockey team. Cool town, and the restaurant scene is very good. There's a place called
Right.
Red's that I really love.
It's a real mid-sized city. It had a great history. It had some hard times. It's coming back. There's a wonderful, strong National Museum of Play, which is something world class. It's expanded, and it's a great museum. Then there's the George Eastman Museum. He was the founder of Kodak exhibits, and it's an early 1900s estate with gardens. It's really beautiful. So there's lots to see and do in Rochester. But as I said, many of the canal towns are only about 20 minutes from downtown. We mentioned Pittsford. There's also Fairport, which is filled with festivals and restaurants and bars and all kinds of fun things. There's Brockport, which has 9 public parks. It's about 20 miles west of Rochester. It's also a lot of fun. And then there's Lockport, which is a suburb of Buffalo, and it has the widest bridge in North America. It spans the canal to the southwest of the locks. There are locks on these canals, and many of them are still usable. There's a Lockport Cave, an underground boat ride in Lockport where you can have fun with the lock. So I think that's another good thing for families. By the way, Buffalo itself, we know it for the Buffalo Bills and chicken wings and all that, but
Yeah.
it's been redeveloping its downtown. Have you been to Buffalo lately, Chris?
I have. It's a great city. People there are amazing, and there's so many cool things.
Yeah, there's something called Canal Side, which is a terrific development of their waterfront. They have beautiful parks designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, who also designed Central Park and who also designed some parks in Rochester. So there's some beautiful old things, and they develop their old buildings beautifully. I know they're repurposing them. So Buffalo's on the rise, just like Rochester, and it's fun to watch that. This area of Western New York is filled with natural water wonders, a lot of water, rivers, lakes, waterfalls, gorgeous carved from the Ice Age. We all know the Niagara River that connects between 2 Great Lakes, the Erie and Ontario, and it culminates with the world famous drop of Niagara Falls near Buffalo, maybe the fastest moving waterfalls in the world. It straddles the Canadian border, and you can walk along the falls or go see the plunging waters from below by boat, and you will get wet, but it's a lot of fun. But we're focusing on watery things you probably didn't know much about. So we're going to pass a little on that. I'm going to tell you about waterfalls in the center of Rochester. We're focusing on watery things that you probably didn't know much about. So I'm going to tell you that there are 3 major waterfalls in the center of Rochester, where the Genesee River drops, and that area is now being developed into a state park. It's a surprise. You come to a downtown with a big waterfall. It's not as big as Niagara, but it's big. And then there's Letchworth State Park between Rochester and Buffalo. It follows the course of the Genesee River. Locals call it the Grand Canyon of the East. It has 3 or 4 waterfalls, 2 lookouts, which are easily accessible from the road. It's really something else. There are hot air balloons sometimes over there. There's an inn where you can eat overlooking the falls. Very special, and not many people know about it out of New York State. Let's talk about your area, Chris, the Finger Lakes. It's maybe an hour or so south of Rochester, a group of 11 long, narrow, roughly north-south lakes located south of Lake Ontario. How were these lakes created?
They're all created by glaciers, and they're
During
all
the Ice Age, right?
correct. Before I moved up there, I didn't really hear a lot about the Finger Lake hidden gem that people are missing.
Because they're very narrow. Some of them are very deep too, like fjords.
The deepest point is almost 252 feet deep.
That's Canandaigua Lake, yeah.
Yes. And I'm someone who's from Texas. So I come from a lot of man-made lakes, and they look like it. You take a boat ride, and then you see the hills and the mountains, and just like it's magical. The
fact that there are 11 of them, like fingers sticking down, from the Great Lakes, and many people do not know about this. And it is a secret because they like to keep it a little uncrowded.
I'm glad we're talking about it because I would love for more people to come visit us.
Yeah, I want other people to see it too. That's why we're doing this segment. Let's talk about the vineyards, hundreds of vineyards and wonderful wine. It's become an excellent wine. It was known for white wine, but now all the wines are very good, right?
The red wines are coming through, and we also have the second most breweries in the country. But the wines up here are just becoming so amazing. When I first moved up here, you try some different wines, different areas, and now everybody's just evolving. They're trying different grapes. They're white wines and they're Rieslings and non-sweet Rieslings, but now they're getting the red wines, and they're even doing some rosés too.
No, I know some really picky people who thought they wouldn't like it, and they just are ordering the wine. It's just really top-notch.
It's flowing now. It's flowing. It's awesome.
Right. There's a lot of music around. There are places, there are venues in vineyards. Many of them have music on weekends, especially in the summer and fall. It's just a great place for that. If you like dark skies where you can see the stars and farm to table cuisine and birds and wildlife, it's great. There's also a lot of Amish and Mennonite culture around.
To be
They
honest with
settled
you.
here lately. It isn't.
I know that they build our Adirondack chairs all the time.
They were settled in other areas and came here later, and it's a wonderful addition. There are wonderful markets and quilts and so forth to buy. So it adds to the beauty of the area. Canandaigua Lake especially has some nice things to note. The Sonnenberg Gardens and Mansion is a 50-acre state park at the north end of the lake. I like the pier with the old boathouses. There's a whole row of beautifully painted boathouses, right?
Beautiful.
So concerts in the summer. And can you swim in the lake?
Yes, you can swim in the lake.
Good.
As long as you don't mind it being a little cold.
How cold are you talking?
I'm from Texas, right? So I like my water like 90 degrees, but it's up to 70 to 72 and people love it. It's refreshing, especially on a 92-degree day. You jump in, it's actually as refreshing. And
Right.
Our hotel, the lake house, we're putting in weed mats, creating a swim area. So you can actually jump in and swim with stairs and make it quite comfortable.
Cool. Well, there are beautiful areas around Canandaigua Lake. Naples is a charming little town in the Highlands. It's the highest area of the region, and it specializes in great hikes and something called grape pie. Have you had grape pie?
I have.
Now, you either love it or you don't. Are you a lover of it? No. It can be very
Actually,
good.
I can lie and say yes, but no.
No. So you should try it. But
My son absolutely loves it, and so does my daughter.
It can be gummy.
You never know. Everybody's taste buds are different.
That's what's fun about a region like this. There's local foods and wonderful traditions. So you want to try them. Bristol Mountain is the highest peak in the region. It's about 1,200 vertical, which isn't that high, but for this area, it is. There's snow made in the winter, and you can do Nordic trails. You could do a zip line in the summer, and that's close to Canandaigua Lake. There's one hike I really like at Grimes Glen. There's two stunning 60-foot waterfalls, and you have to walk through a stream. Have you done it?
My team does tours there, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's very nice. Go early in the morning before it gets crowded. That's my tip, usually for things, to try to go off peak. Now, another lake besides Canandaigua that I especially love is Keuka Lake. It's a Y-shaped lake, and both banks covered in vineyards. If you like wine, if you just take these tours, you can go to 5 or 6 wineries in a day and just enjoy.
It's an amazing area.
Lake. It looks like it's in Italy or something.
It really does, actually.
Yeah. Very beautiful. There's a town called Hammondsport at the south end where there's Glenn Curtis Museum, which is focusing on planes and so forth. At the top, at the north, a town called Penn Yan is very charming as well. Now, Seneca Lake is the deepest of the lakes. I think we mentioned that. I think they did submarine training there. It was so deep. There's a town called Geneva at the north end, which has wonderful 19th century architecture. Do you like Geneva?
It's always like a special thing for us, but the best food in the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, I know there are many good restaurants. It's farm to table. It's all fresh, farmland all around. And that's one of the beauties of it, both the beauty and the food. You've got these fields of fresh vegetables and fruits all summer and fall. There's one place in Geneva that I like. It's called Belhurst Castle, built about, I think, 1885. You can have high tea there. It's very elegant. Take your wife.
I like high tea.
Now, Watkins Glen is at the southern end of Seneca Lake. It's known for its race car driving, right? But it's also known for the waterfalls that they have in the gorges there. The last lake that I love is Cayuga. That's where Ithaca College is. Have you been there?
I have. It's one of my favorite lakes. Besides Canandaigua, the views that you can see the entire thing is just magical.
It has waterfalls all over the place. As they say, Ithaca is gorgeous, meaning with the gorgeous. It has the tallest waterfall east of the Rockies. Very beautiful. It's a kind of laid-back area with hidden beauty, natural scenery, good food, place to relax, see the stars. This is the place. The name of the podcast is Places I Remember. So, Chris, would you please share one special memory of this beautiful area of New York?
So my most special moment to me, and it makes me emotional, is when I moved my family up here last year, right? So we went on our second pontoon boat ride in Lake Canandaigua. And I took my wife and my son and my daughter, and my son caught his first fish on Lake Canandaigua. As a proud dad, he caught it himself. It just brings tears to my eyes because you don't get to experience those things, but only once, right? You only get your first fish one time. and it was magical and it
Yeah.
was great. My wife's like, wow, we actually live here. This is amazing.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's that kind of place.
But I've lived all around the country and all around the world, and this is absolutely my favorite.
Yeah, I've traveled obviously a lot all over the world, and I find something about the atmosphere up here. I don't know what it is quite. It's a combination, right?
And we need people to come up here.
They will, because it's a great place. They tell others. So anyway, for the moment, it's perfect. So through all 4 seasons, upstate New York from east to west is a special American region worthy of a visit, especially if you get on or even near the water. I love New York, especially this area of New York, and I think Chris does too, obviously.
I love it.
So I thank you, Chris Jennings, General Manager of the Lake House in Canandaigua, for joining us. Here's to the Finger Lakes, the Erie Canal, and all the beautiful waters.
I want to thank you, Leah. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great time, and I'm just glad I could share my experiences.
Thanks for listening to our award-winning podcast. We've recorded over 100 episodes of Places I Remember, so follow us on any podcast app. And new monthly episodes are also on YouTube with gorgeous video. My book, Places I Remember, is available in print and Kindle, and I read the audio version. Follow my travel writing at Forbes.com. Contact me at the links in the show notes or on my website, placesirememberlealane.com, and keep making your own travel memories.